Oh yeah, everyone needs to move forward because there's lots of open spaces. Josh is probably the exception, but he's already moved forward anyhow. So come on forward. This looks to be pretty much everyone, so we'll do that. Even the speaker's moving forward.
No, don't spit. I'll try not to spit.
It's always one, maybe four in this case. Welcome everyone to the first preaching prep session for 2019. Thank you, Isaac. It's great to see so many of you here, mostly young. That's good. As in, there's not like older adults here, but that's fine. I'm assuming most of you have booked into preaching week. And that's probably why you're here. We are particularly after some help during the weekdays if you are free, so let Tamar or AJ, if Tamar's not here, she is here, she's out the back, awesome. Let her know if you're available to help during the weekday. A reminder also, if you haven't paid, to do so. So tonight is an awesome night planned by Brother Josh Johns on preaching in everyday life. Now, Josh has been coordinating Interested Friends classes here at Cumberland for some time. He's done a lot of work in the preaching space, including on the GPA, so we welcome having his expertise here tonight. And sorry for all those who brought their hymn books, according to the email. Minor miscommunication, because we don't have any hymns planned. There also won't be a reading, because Josh is going to look at a number of passages individually during the night, and so what we'll do instead is, if you'd all rise, approach our Heavenly Father in prayer. O gracious Lord, Almighty God, we seek your presence now to be with us for this night. We place our trust in you, for you are in complete control of this world and are looking after us with all your love and mercy every day. Your angels are working around us to guide our lives, strengthen our faith, and build our resolve to serve you with all our might. May you continue to be with us in everything we say, think, and do, so that we might continue to build on our faith and share our hope and our faith to everyone around us. Help us gain preaching tips for our everyday life tonight that we can apply firstly to the show stand, but ultimately to every circumstance in our life, that more may come to know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ who you have sent. Open our ears tonight to take in your word and guide the words of Josh to help us do that. We thank you for bringing us safely together through Jesus Christ, our ultimate example. Amen. So without further ado, we will let Josh come up and give us his first session.
Thanks, Gus. Good evening, everyone. I'm super excited to be here to talk about preaching. It's actually one of my favourite things to do in life. Weirdly enough, despite the lows that come when seemingly no one wants to listen, I just find that makes the highs even higher. I mean, there's nothing quite like being involved in saving someone's life, is there? Now, I've heard you guys have been busy fundraising and preparing for the stand, so I've heard and seen a few pictures. It's looking good, so excited by that. Now, tonight I'm going to share with you some of my preaching experiences to date, and hopefully I can bring out some tips and helpful points that may help you. Tips on the show stand, Bible exhibition and daily life preaching. Turn me to Acts chapter 18. So Acts chapter 18, verse 9 and 10. We've got here, and one night in a vision the Lord said to Paul, Do not be afraid. Go on speaking and do not be silent, for I am with you. No one will attack or harm you, for I have many people in this city." He settled there for 1.5 years and taught the word of God among them. So we see here, the Lord's chosen people already. Okay? Paul wasn't doing the choosing, and not that we know of. These people weren't pointed out to Paul. You can talk to the people that are flashing green, but don't bother with the people that are just grey, and definitely don't talk to the people that are flashing red. No, Paul just had to speak to everyone, and that's the way the Lord was going to get these people attentions, via the word of Paul. Now, we also need to see ourselves as an extension of God's hands, because, in the same way. So we also need not to be silent and just keep on inviting, and God can reach people around us that he has chosen. Okay, getting prepared, I believe the absolute first step is praying to God, because it is a joint effort, and we need to discuss it with him and ask him to guide us to the people that he wants and he's chosen. Now, I know that if I'm praying for preaching opportunities, then naturally I'm actually looking for more preaching opportunities. When you pray, perhaps you could pray for someone you've got in mind that you're going to go talk to, or invite along to something. Say, "Dear God, please be with Jared, open his heart so that he might be receptive to what I'm going to talk to him about." We'll pray to God and ask for courage. Perhaps going on the show stand, pray, "Please give me courage to attract people's attention." Okay, I mean, these sorts of environments are quite difficult when it comes to places like the show, because you're sort of competing against the flashy, glossy stuff, and companies are spending a lot of money around you, and they're sort of developing things for the here and now, and so we're competing against that. However, they don't have God on their side, do they? So we need to pray to God and ask for help. And we need to pray, perhaps with, this display is going to be Noah and the Ark and building faith. Pray to God and say, "Please be with me as you were with Noah," that we're like a witness to everyone around, because the same sort of destruction is coming. And we know in Matthew chapter 24, I'll read this out for you, "For the coming of the Son of Man will just be like in the days of Noah. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be." So if we believe we are living in the last days, sometimes I think try not to be too disappointed when it feels like no one's listening, because that's Jesus telling us that it's going to be like in the days of Noah. Yet we still got to be a witness regardless, just as Noah was. And we know that he preached righteousness. So at the stand, you'll be preaching that people, God requires faith and how to build faith. Turn with me to 1 Peter 3. I really like this one. And starting verse 20. "Who were once disobedient, when the patience of God kept waiting in the days of Noah, during the construction of the ark, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were brought safely through the water. Corresponding to that, baptism now saves you, not by the removal of dirt from the flesh, but an appeal to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Perhaps when you get a chance to have a discussion with someone at the stand, maybe this is the first you could have a look and show them and say, look, this shows us that, this is the link between Noah's salvation and our salvation. It's through baptism. And those that went into the ark, they had to have faith to go into there and had faith that God was going to save them via the ark. And we need to have faith that God can save us, and through water. So, let's get the conversation started. I believe one of the most important elements to preaching is enthusiasm and to be genuine. It doesn't matter what nationality the person is, they'll be more likely to listen to you if you show a genuine interest in them and be enthusiastic about what you're telling them. And you can see this when you do go to the show, when you see other salespeople walking around and you see towards the end of the week, and their heart's not in it and they're totally over it, and you can just, they just can't be bothered. You can hear it in their voice, you can see it in their face. Oh, I've got to, go and have a look at that, But show it in your face that this means something to you. Now, we all do have ups and downs in our walk in the way, and when we're excited by what God's given us, then we're usually compelled to spread it as much as we can. And when you're feeling down, it's going to be quite hard to attract people. And in fact, in my life, I can think of times like that I'm not even looking for preaching opportunities. And in those times, you're probably giving up lots of good opportunities. And you look back and go, that was a waste. You kick yourself afterwards thinking, I should have said something, but you just weren't in the mood. Now, you don't have to have the gift of the gab to attract people to Christ. You just need to be genuine, and you need to try and use every opportunity that you're given. All right, getting the conversation started. First, I'm going to talk about an indirect way, a couple of indirect ways. And we learnt this probably about 4 years ago. We were on holidays in New Zealand, and my family and another family were just doing some sightseeing, and there was another couple, I think were queuing up to get on something, or I can't even remember exactly where we were, but there was this a couple in their 50s, and they started talking to us, where you're from and whatnot. And the lady just started launching into this story, and I can't even remember what the story was about. However, at one point, my ears pricked up, and I got pretty big ears, but they sort of went wider and I think anyone that was listening to that story went, oh, because she said, in the middle of the story, she said, and at that point, I prayed to my God to help my friend out of his troubles. And then she continued on with the story, thinking, okay, wow. And of course, we're Christians, we're Christadelphians, so we let her know, and we got chatting for quite some time. And then she said, I've told that exact same story hundreds of times to people, she travels all over the world, to people, anyone that I meet, and I'm just stuck in a queue or I'm just chatting to random strangers, she tells that story. She says, the amount of discussion that's come out of that, and she said she's got phone numbers and email addresses of people all over the world that she still corresponds with. Right? So what a brilliant way of, in a short period of time, to complete strangers, letting them know that you believe in God. And look where it's led, lots of conversations with lots of different people. So I thought that was a really good way, indirect way, non-confronting way of letting people know that you believe in God. And I've sort of been, since then, tried to develop a bit of a story around travelling to Tanna. People say, oh, what are you doing in Tanna? And then you can tell them what you're doing in Tanna, and that leads on to more conversations. You could think about developing a story in your life about something that you can then drop a hint, so hopefully get the conversation started. And some people won't say anything, right? But she said that more often than not, people have. Okay, another indirect way. If you turn over your page to the second page there, turning an everyday conversation. Now, I've just put things down there that, you get asked weekly, more than, 2-3 times a week, some of those things. Your job is to try and turn those everyday conversations. Doesn't matter how you do it, but by the end of it, you want to hopefully let them know that you're a Christian somehow. Okay? They ask you what you did on the weekend. What do you say? Okay? And of course, if you show some excitement about it, what do you say? Oh, I went to church. Went to church. No. Be excited about it. Be proud of what you do. And that's the way that you're going to draw people in. And perhaps over supper you can maybe take in turns of, pair up and take in turns of asking people those simple things and see how they get their brain think of how they could respond to those questions and turn it around. All right, tips for directly inviting people. Now, these are people that you're already in contact with, whether they be school friends, uni friends, work colleagues, or neighbours or anything. You probably already know by now what type of person they are, whether they're timid people or whether they're quite confident. And depending on that, you need to decide, are you just going to send them a link to a presentation that you watched, or are you going to invite them straight up to something? It really depends on that person, and only you're going to know what you think is going to be best to do. If I'm going to give them a link to something, I'd probably say, hey, I just watched this awesome presentation the other day on Bible prophecy, and I thought it was absolutely fascinating. Look, I can send you a link to it. I thought it was a real eye-opener, and see what you think. Send it to them, give them a few days, send them a message, or when you catch up with them next, say, what do you think of it? Maybe invite them over invite them out for a coffee, get the conversation started there, or have them over for a meal, or straight up invite them to something. Like, hey, Gaza, what are you going to the show this year? Oh, yeah. Always go to the show to get a few Birdie Beetle bags. Love them. Yeah, well, actually, I'm going to be going to the show and going to be working on the stand this year. I haven't been for a few years, but going to be working on a stand. Oh, yeah, what sort of stand's that? Well, it's actually put on by the Christadelphian Young People of Adelaide, and it's all about Noah and the Ark and building faith. Oh yeah, I've heard of that bloke Noah. Yeah, okay. Well, perhaps we could catch up on the stand and I could show you through and maybe get a bite to eat after that. However, do some inviting, whether it be that or the Bible exhibition. Let them know that you're going to go in there. You checked it out and you thought it was great, and you can give them a tour, go out for tea afterwards, whatever it takes. Another tip, when you're sitting Sunday morning or whenever the announcements are done, the 10 minutes of announcements, the pleasurable announcements, and you're sitting there going, maybe get your phone out, get the diary, put in what your interested friends' classes are, the title and the topic and the speaker, and so that you have got something to invite someone to. When the seminar's starting, put it in your diary so that you're prepared. because you're not going to think of inviting anyone if you can't even think of what's on. So if it's all there, helps. I even find that casual outings are a good icebreaker for people that, want to just sort of check out what you like without feeling, it's usually a different place other than the hall. Usually a good icebreaker. Now, if you know they are Christians already, my tact is sort of tell them something that you found interesting in a talk or a study that you've been doing. Perhaps I'd probably put it like, we've been doing some studies on Daniel. We've been really impressed with all the finer details in Daniel and how they were fulfilled absolutely perfectly in the time span of the prophecies, and yet perfectly fulfilled. I've just been, staggered by how amazing it is. And that could lead into, we've been doing this Daniel study on Tuesday nights, and anyone's welcome to come. Why don't you come along? I highly recommend it, and see what you think. Give it a try. Perhaps if you look on the bottom of that second sheet, there's something we did in our house. Do a readings group in your home or the park or the library. Put an invite in letterboxes or shoot around a group text. Hey, have you ever read the Bible? Are you interested? They'll either say yes or don't reply at all. So that's always something worth a try. Always, whenever you're doing giving a verbal invite or a text invite, I always like to what I call sweeten the deal. It makes it easier for them to say yes, okay, by adding on, invite them to something and say, I can give you a lift. I can come pick you up. Starts at 7:30. I'll pick you up at 7. Because they're going to feel more comfortable coming into the hall or the venue or wherever you're going to be with you than coming in worried whether they're going to turn up earlier than you and where are you. So they're more likely to say yes if you're going to go and walk in with them. Tea beforehand, whatever it takes. And I always like to, if I've given a verbal invite to something, maybe the next day or so, I'll shoot them a text saying, just the details on that. Send them the title, send them the venue, and say, see you there. Follow it up with a message, just a reminder. Christians don't tend to have a problem with coming to other Christian things. I mean, Gus invited one of his uni mates to come along. I think he said, I'll come to your Bible discussion group if you come to mine, and whatever it takes. Gus is now training to be a Catholic priest. No, just kidding. Yeah, so if... I've found that, I've lost where I am now. That's right. I meet a lot of different people through my work and a lot of different nationalities. So I always find it useful to know what religion they are, because that does help. If there's nothing obvious like a cross, or if you go into the house, a Hindu shrine or whatever, I tend to ask a few general questions first about, how long they've lived here and whether they like it here and where they're from and they've got family here. And then I'll ask them, what religion are you? And then I'll let them know that I was a Christian. And that can then lead to a discussion. And if they were any other religion other than Christian, or they were no religion at all, just let them know. Say, hey, I'm a Christian because I've read the Bible and it's an absolutely amazing book, staggering book, and I highly recommend it. If you give it a try, give it a read, I mean, if you have any questions, I'm only happy to help out answering anything that you want to do with the Bible. So give me your number, and so that's a way that I'll, when I'm talking to strangers and meeting people all day, every day, so try and start up a few conversations like that. I wouldn't compare my religion with their religion or even profess to know much about theirs, even if I did, because I don't find that's been very useful or positive, because there's so many different... I mean, you might think that you know what a certain religion believes, but there's so many different, variants, and you don't want to offend people with what, you presume what they think, they believe. However, I do find talking to different nationalities and inviting them along is, I find it quite easy to actually entice people along to things. And we know that some Christians actively seek out Christianity because previously, from where they came from, they weren't free to do so. So that's something they tend to be okay to come along to something because of that. Now, I just want to talk about our bias to inviting people, and I put this in here because I do... it's one of those things. I have in the past, you just write people off before you even give them a chance. You sort of start looking at, what's their morals like? What's their, are they just too far gone? And it's not a good thing really, because we don't know what's in these people's heart, right? So you should always give someone equal opportunity. So, so it can be quite sad because we can be deceived by external looks especially. And I read people wrong quite often, because I do get surprised on the people that do end up coming, and the people that I thought, they'll just fit, they'll slot right in, and they're the ones that are not interested. So, so we can't really be the judge of that. We don't know what's in people's hearts, and we don't know how God's working in their lives, or working with how we're inviting them either. I know there's that parable where you're casting pearls before swine, and we probably need to take that into consideration. Now, one thing that has stopped me preaching in the past as much as I do now is the fear of not having an answer to a question that's probably, quite frankly, never going to be asked. All right? And that fear has stopped me. Next week, Uncle Tim, make sure you call him Uncle Tim too, because I think I even call him Uncle Tim. He's way older than me. So he's going to talk about some the basics and some tips to help build your confidence. However, you'll be surprised on how much you know off the top of your head already, even when talking to other Christians, and how much you know on most Bible topics from just what you've learned at Sunday school. Now, in the last 30 years, I'd have to say that I can't remember ever being asked a question that I felt that I haven't given a reasonable answer to off the top of my head, and I failed Sunday school. If it were possible to fail Sunday school, I probably would have failed Sunday school. However, it's always useful to brush up. When you're doing a session with Uncle Tim, he's going to give you lots of worksheets and whatever, no doubt, and jot down as much info as you can, because he's come in from outside, so he's a good one to know what the sort of things that helped him, all right, come to the way. So a tip for that is, go home, when you've got a spare minute, put them in your notes in your phone, because you always got your phone on you and that will help you. Just having the confidence, knowing that you've got a whole list of extra stuff on there that you could use if you needed to, if it's in your pocket, it's going to give you more confidence. Now, if anyone throws you a curly question or you have a brain freeze, you can say, hey, that's a really good question. Deserves a really good answer. I'll get back to you on that one. And no one expects you to know everything off the top of your head anyway. So don't let this fear stop you. Just get out and give it a try. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. This is to show to you that you can be an extension of God's hand at any age. Firstly, my mum, when she was 19, she invited a lady that was a little bit older than her at work to come along to a few things, and she did. And she was baptised, and she still attends the Woodville Ecclesia. The only person that I've physically baptised was a lady in her 20s who was originally from Thailand. She had a Buddhist background originally, so all her family back in Thailand's Buddhist, and she came to Adelaide to work. Now, my wife had taken her through for baptism, and she actually was there being baptised. I've got to tell this story after. Indirectly, via the hand of my sister when she was 10. So what happened was, my mum would always encourage us to invite friends home, school friends. We went to Kernlight Gardens Primary, just down the road, and she'd say, bring people home. And if you get a chance, invite them to Sunday school. You love going, they might love coming. So the four of us kids would invite our school friends to come to Sunday school. And we all had friends come to Sunday school at different points. Some would come for a week or two or a month and then drop off. But this one lad that my sister invited when she was 10 said, sure, came along, and he didn't stop coming. So, and then a couple of months later, when his dad was coming to pick him up from Sunday school, my mum caught his attention and said, hey, we've actually got an adult class as well, and you're welcome to come along. So he started coming to our Tuesday night classes, and then he actually came for about 8 years. And then he had this, because he was a Christian already, but he reckoned that everything else we had right except for when it came to the devil. He was absolutely certain that it was supernatural. One day it finally clicked. Yes, you're right, and I want to be baptised. So he was baptised, and then he encouraged his wife to be baptised, and his son, and his wife and his son were baptised, and he was still attending Sunday school at the time, were baptised on the same day. So there's 3 of them baptised now because of my sister. And then this lad eventually meets this Thai lady at his work, invites her along to things, and then my wife ended up taking her through baptism. So if it wasn't for the courage of my sister to do some inviting, for people, I mean, God obviously worked through her to bring about his will. In fact, this couple have now got twin boys who are about to attend Sunday school probably next year, so, which is awesome. I'll tell you another story that has the similarities to that, of another girl who had the courage to speak up. We don't actually know her name, but it's written for us, recorded for us in 2 Kings chapter 5, if you want to turn there. And she teaches us so much. Second Kings 5, starting at verse 1. Naaman, the army commander of the king of Aram, was highly esteemed and respected by his master, for through him the Lord had brought victory to Aram. But valiant as he was, the man was a leper. Now, the Arameans had captured from the land of Israel in a raid a little girl who became the servant of Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my master would present himself to the prophet in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." What do we learn from this? Well, obviously you can preach at any age. I mean, even though this girl was a slave, she obviously served her master with love, and she was trusted by her master, as her opinion is not only taken into consideration, but believed. She has great courage to speak up, despite her quite lowly position, and she had great faith that God had the power to heal her master via this prophet. And she showed in her actions that she genuinely cared for her master. The other thing I observed from this is that people observe what type of people we are well before we open up our mouths. All right? If this girl was lazy, or tried to cut corners and rip her master off, or was not a genuine kid, then what she had came out of her mouth would have been totally disregarded. But obviously, by her actions, she was already preaching before she said anything. I also get from this passage that God can use any situation to bring about his will, whether it be a good situation or a bad situation. And see, sometimes we can not preach or speak up because we're waiting sort of like waiting for a better opportunity. She had every reason here not to speak up. She was a slave. I mean, what right did she have to say anything, really? She might have been persecuted for opening up her mouth. She's surrounded by unbelievers, hostile, potentially. But she uses the opportunity given to her, despite her quite bleak situation. And we need to learn from this that we need to use every opportunity given to us, whatever the timing. If it's not good timing in our lives, well, there's still an opportunity we need to use. Now, Paul, at the end of his life, when he was like handing on the preaching baton to Timothy, he said, "I want you to preach the word, be instant in season, out of season." Now, a lot of translations actually use the word instant. They swap it out for persistent. Timothy, I want you to be persistent in preaching this word, in season, out of season. You think, well, that just means all the time. It does, but I think there's a little bit in it more than that. In season, I believe, is a time like a time when there's a real opportunity or some special opportunity arises that there's an advantage. Okay, so in season, when the sun's growing, it's hot, it's warm, there's a bit of moisture around, it's the perfect conditions. Okay, out of season is in a time when there's no apparent probability of interesting anyone. And usually in these times we think, why are we even bothering? Right? No one's listening. What's going on? I don't have anything to invite them to at the moment, that I think's going to attract anyone's attention. But we're told in season, out of season. We need to do it regardless. Because we don't know how God is going to work with us, even out of season. Remember, this came from a guy that was in prison at the time. Quite a hopeless situation, and yet he did some great preaching from prison. Now, I found this great passage that fits in really well with this idea, in season and out of season, and preaching. And I'm going to read this for you. It's in Ecclesiastes chapter 11. And I want you to think about it in the terms of this, preaching and in season, out of season. He who watches the wind will not sow, and he who observes the clouds will not reap. Just as you do not know the path of the wind, or how the bones form in the womb of a pregnant woman, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything. Sow your seed in the morning, and do not stop until the evening. For you do not know which activity will succeed, whether this one or that one, or whether both will prosper equally. I think that's an awesome little passage. And I get from this, don't be idle. I'm just too busy to preach at the moment. We've got to stop putting off preaching until the conditions are just perfect, or the timing is just perfect, because it's not up to us, because God will bring the increase. It's a joint effort, remember. We've just got to get out there and spread the seed. So I would encourage everyone to use every opportunity given them and not wait for a supposed better opportunity. A few years ago, we had a brother come and talk to us about how Christadelphians first came to be in South Australia, and I was super impressed with this brother that lived in Melbourne at the time. And he became sick, and the doctors back in those days just didn't give me antibiotics. They said, the remedy is you've got to have a sea holiday. So you've got to go to the coast and breathe in that salty sea air, and that's going to help you. And so he thinks, okay, we're going to have a sea holiday. Where could I go? So he saw that a boat was going from Port Melbourne to Port Goolwa, down here, Victor Harbour, Goolwa. And he thought, I'll book a trip there and they'll have a holiday for a couple of weeks down at Goolwa. So he goes there and he books into some accommodation down at Goolwa. And the first thing he does, apparently, is goes and asks the guy behind the counter and says, Are you interested in the Bible? And the guy goes, nah. So he goes, well, do you know of anyone in the area that might be interested in the Bible? And the guy said, yeah, there's people just down the road, 8 houses down or something. And so he chases up the lead and he goes and knocks on these people's door and gets chatting to them, said, I heard you're interested in the Bible. Got chatting, and long story short, by correspondence and another few trips, these people were baptised. And from there, it spread up to Adelaide. So, yeah. Do we have set times to preach? When I'm not on holidays, when I'm not busy, when I'm not sick, when seminars are about to start, that's when I'm going to do it. This guy here, he's sick and he's on holidays and he's preaching. And we're thankful to that guy too. And God was obviously working in his life to bring about attracting people to him. Now, I want to move on to the next step, and that is you've done an awesome job. You've got people to, with God's help, of course, you've got interested friends coming along. Maintaining friends. I'll talk about that now. So we know getting people along is half of it. Making them feel a part of something special is the other half. And you need to, when you do get friends to come along, introduce them to other people so that they can interact with them and makes them feel less of an outsider, because the more people they get to know, the better. Okay? If you're not well, you can't make it to something, and they're still going to come along, they're not going to feel lonely. They already met other people, they've already chatted to other people, and they'll feel comfortable coming in and still coming along even though you're not going. You need to let them into your lives. There's a lot of lonely people out there, and yeah, we can be their family, can't we? If you're going camping, if it's not too far away, invite them up, go on camping, sit around the fire. It's always a good time to have a chat. Quite often I message Bible quotes, and the amount of quotes that I get back and the amount of stuff that I get back is really cool. I'd probably get a couple of messages a day from friends, and I try and, as soon as they send me something, I'll send them something back. So that's always a good way to let them know that you're still thinking of them. You know, keep building friendships that way. And it's always a good idea to catch up outside of the hall. Out for coffee, out for lunch, out for tea, doesn't matter as well. Now, next section, don't give up on people. Now, this makes me squirm a bit, because what I'm about to tell you is not very comfortable for me. This is something I did in the past that I feel, is very, very bad. Very, very bad. So please learn from this. I can think of 2 cases early days where I invited someone along, and they said, "Yeah, we're coming." And then when it came to the night, they didn't show. And, I had high hopes for them. And I envisaged them sitting there, enjoying the talk, and they were loving it, They just wanted to, they were lapping it up. And they weren't there. It was a brilliant talk. And I'd let the speakers know that they were going to come. And then they weren't there, and I felt like I let them down, and it was such a good night, and I was just really annoyed, And here comes the really bad part. I never contacted them again about anything. All right? Just blanked it. Nothing. They said they were coming. They didn't come. That's it. Never messaged them about anything again. There's a much better way to handle it. And this is what I do now. And for those people that do a fair bit of inviting, from time to time, people don't come, even though they said they're going to come. Don't be disheartened, because it does happen, okay? People get nervous, okay? And genuinely, sometimes people have something else that happened and they couldn't come. Right? They wanted to come, they didn't, they couldn't. Don't start thinking, was I not persuasive enough, or was I too pushy? It's not that. What I do now is I send them a message. Might not even be the next day, maybe a couple of days later, say, "Oh, sorry you missed the whatever it was." It's all good, because they actually recorded it. They filmed it, or they recorded it, and I'll send you the link to it. Send them a link to it. So that is a much better way, because then they still get to watch it. They still see that it was something that they shouldn't have been scared of if they were nervous of it. And it keeps the discussion going. They said they were going to come once, they might come again. And the other example I've got about not giving up on people is of early days. If I invited someone to something and I didn't get a definite yes, I'd only ever invite them to one thing, all right? And then I'd move on to someone else. All right? That's not a good idea either, because you don't know how God is working in their lives, and eventually they might be receptive to an invite. For example, Jeb knows this, we have a family hairdresser, and half their half their job is cutting hair, the other half is chatting. And, you know, we chatted about the Bible and whatnot, and we'd invited her to maybe 2 or 3 things, and she'd never said that. She said, no, I can't make it, or she couldn't come or whatnot. But because we're always in contact with her, always chatting, we went around there with the kids and gave her an invite to the Israel's 70th anniversary birthday thing. And a couple of days later, she rang me up and said, I'm coming, save me a seat. So if you just plan on just inviting people once and never again if they say no or they can't make it, that's another way. We don't give up on people because you never know. We don't know how God is working in their lives. All right, thanks for having me, guys. I know preaching doesn't come naturally to the majority of us, but with more practice, it will become easier. And I'd just like to finish off by saying, God bless your preaching work and your efforts, and just get in there and give it a go and don't stop. So, thank you.
Thanks so much, Uncle Josh, for tonight. And despite being claimed that I'm studying to be a Catholic priest, you have provided us lots of tips for preaching in everyday life, including almost pulling this off the table, including using indirect comments about our life in Christ or direct appeals to invite them along, going out of our way to encourage them along, giving them enticing ways, but ultimately not being afraid to preach. Trusting that God will give the increase and will use any situation to bring about his will. And knowing that at any age and anyone can preach and that there are so many ways that we can do it. So hopefully you've all been encouraged tonight about how we're going to preach and how we can do it in our own lives as well as at the stand. Aaron Pitcher will come up with some announcements after our closing prayer. We have also video recorded tonight and will be uploaded to the Suburban YouTube in due time. So if someone said they weren't coming and they were coming and they didn't, make sure that you send them the link. It will be good practice for preaching. So if you would rise, we will pray for supper and give thanks to God for tonight. Dear Lord our God, how great you are and how greatly you are to be praised. We thank you so much for our session tonight where we've been encouraged to preach in every circumstance of our lives and to develop our faith to help us do so. We thank you also for the supper that has been prepared for tonight. May you bless it to give us the strength to serve you with all our heart. Be with us as we travel home tonight and during the coming weeks before the show stand, to develop our faith and to practice our preaching to others and to preach. May the preaching week at the show run smoothly, and ultimately may some more people come to know of you and your ways and be given a way into the kingdom of everlasting life. We thank and praise you once more for all the great things you do. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Thanks again, Gus, and thanks to all that come tonight. And again, thanks to Uncle Josh for helping us give tips and ideas so we can assist and be witnesses for our God. Just got a couple of announcements. First of all, can the guys with the collection bags just go around? This is just a collection, obviously, to raise funds for Preaching Week. We are still in need of donations. So, if you don't have cash on you also, we've got some donation slips down here with the bank details and also up on the screen. So if you want to do a donation electronically, follow those steps. That'd be really appreciated. Most of you might have booked into the show stand, so look out for some emails that will come up in your inbox in the next week or two. That will be in regard to your time slot and what needs to happen on the show. So the things that we'll include in it is times you're assigned to, what day and who the contact person is, and that's very valuable for getting into the show. And the next session, there'll be some more information on that. If you have any questions about it, come and see me or one of the committee members, because they'll be able to tell you how that can happen. Our next session is next Monday evening. It's at Enfield. It's at 7:30, and our Uncle Tim Dean will be giving that on the principles of preaching. So everyone is welcome to that, and obviously supper will be provided. So we'll look forward to seeing you all there, and God bless with your preaching activities.